pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Ms. Alling is here. Ms. Valentine.
Here.
Ms. Hammond.
Here.
Mr. Jane.
Here.
Mr. Larson.
Here.
Mr. Samuel Lamb. Mr. Schultz.
Here. Next, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second, let's vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next will be public announcements, recognitions, and upcoming events.
We'll start off with two donations. One of them from our very own Crystal Ailing and her husband John toward the middle school's music department for $65, and then another $25 from Melissa Ernest in honor of John toward the high school's music department. So thank you for that. We did have, right before our last board meeting, some news on the state biennial budget that was signed by Governor Evers right before the 4th of July. The primary focus of that biennial budget in terms of the education component of that was directly into special education. So you hear $550 million into special education, which is fantastic. The way that Eric and I are looking at it, we've talked about it recently, where special education funding was at about 30% of the total cost, and usually you didn't even see all of that 30%. That's now going to be up to about 42.5% in this current year, and then another 45% in year two. By our estimates, that really only, and I don't mean to be, unappreciative, but it really only ends up to be about $250,000 or maybe $300,000 in addition to our budget based on what we spend for special education. The high cost, which sounds like a lot of money, 50% this year, 90% next year, is also great, but we rarely have even one or two high-cost special education students, so it doesn't add up to much. What Eric and I are worried about, we even started looking at where that mill rate might fall for October when we have our annual meeting, is the old balancing act where when you go up to the revenue limit, if the state funding for you increases, your local property tax demand will decrease. What's happening here though now is the line item veto that Governor Evers did last year for the $325 per pupil, we can still levy that. That's going to come from the local taxpayers. So although they did put more into special education, there's no per pupil aid increase, there's no low revenues ceiling limit increase. So we will see some new money into our budget, but again, it's going to be a little bit more of a burden on our local taxpayers, and we'll have to educate the public as we go through that process.
Let me understand that again. I guess I didn't gather that from your notes here.
Sure.
The $325 increase, which is supposed to be an increase in the state funding, right?
Correct.
Not coming from the state.
Right. They remember that was the one that they even went to legal battle because it was that's the $400 400 years
Yes.
in perpetuity. So really what the state legislature did, and the government did sign it, is they're not really putting that $325 into the money that we're getting. Your revenue limit is going to stay the same, but you're really going to have to get that from the local taxpayers.
Sounds sus to me.
I would agree. I don't want to get political, but the legislature was saying we didn't agree with how this was done last year, and so we're not going to. The the legislature is not going to pay for that. Local taxpayers are gonna have to pay for that. It's obviously a political move on their end, because it is going to hit your property taxes.
Seems to me that would be a shooting themselves in the foot, but oh well.
Yeah. So we will talk a lot more about that. And again, what we're looking at is a slight increase in the mill rate from last year, from where we were at with 7.73. But we are predicting that when you take the total property value increase in the district, it won't be that much of and you won't feel that increase as much. We're hoping to keep that mill rate under 8. That would be the goal. We'll see if we can get there. Better news, Scott Anderson, who's always applying for grants, got nearly $8,000 from WPPI, and he plans to primarily continue that LED project at the high school. Scott's also applied for an EAF grant. We'll see in about a week or so if he'll also get one of those. Great news on a statewide level for Izzy Ganong. She is on the SALT team, which is a student athlete leadership team. That's a statewide WIAA leadership team. So congratulations to her. Anybody that knows her knows she's got a very upbeat, positive personality, and she'll be great in that role. Tomorrow is the last day of summer school for our session here, so that will come to a conclusion. I wasn't planning on mentioning this, but Culver's has invited some of our staff so they can practice before they have their big grand opening on Monday. And so to reward our summer school staff, they'll get to go from 3 to 4 p.m. and have a free meal at Culver's. So we're excited about that. Scott Malone, who's he's not the general manager, but the owner, has been a really good partner already with the school district. I know Joni has already reached out about Scoopy nights, so it'll be a good partnership, and I know everybody's excited that they're going to open soon. And then looking ahead, again, it's July 23rd, so right around the corner we have fall sports. So the fall sports meetings for both the middle and high school will be taking place at the end of July and early part of August. I will be sending out my back to school letter to staff next Thursday, and then parents, you'll get another one from me the next day because registration opens. There is an incentive to do registration because as soon as you do registration, at least at the middle and high school, you'll be able to see your students' schedules. And then on the 15th of August, if you've registered, you can see your kids' schedules as well, who they'll have for the classroom teacher. We are going to work with other Rock County districts again for school safety concerns, bouncing ideas off each other, and then trying to work cooperatively together on that. And then last but not least, the district's administrative team and then the pupil services department, so our counselors, our school psychologists, are going to go to a behavior threat assessment training in Middleton in the early part of August all together to get updated with our training on that as well. We're right around the corner before you'll start seeing a lot of staff back in the building again. Usually once the calendar turns to August, we start to have quite a few staff here again.
Is there any questions? Any other public recognitions? If not, is there any public presentations? Moving on to information discussion, Director of Food Service, year-end report.
All right, so Pam and Lisa are here. When we talked about giving a report, remember they had, Taher had been here a number of years ago, had the break with Aramark. Taher's been back, really had gotten, at least from our perspective, the administrative team, had a lot of positive feedback on food quality, food portions this year, especially at the middle and high school, satisfied kids with what they were getting to eat each day. And then we've been working recently on, again, as we talked about, increasing those breakfast numbers, making sure kids have opportunities to do that. And then finally, trying to get those that we believe would be eligible for free and reduced lunch to be able to apply for that, so that takes that burden off of them. So with that, I'll pass it over to Lisa and Pam.
Hi, welcome. I'm Lisa Carreo, District Manager with Taher, and this is Pam Welty.
And I'm the Food Service Director here in the district.
So great, thank you for having us tonight. I'm just going to share some of the overall revenue statistics, and then we'll highlight the year looking at our blueprint scrapbook that Pam will share with you all here tonight. So the year-to-date through June and September always pulls our averages down. So the beginning of the year, because all the kids are still bringing their lunch boxes, and the end of the year with all the field trips and things, it really pulls our averages down. So with that being said, our average daily breakfast meals for the whole year was 286 a day, but the great news is February through May, it was 316 a day, with a focus on the high school. And our team really, I mean, when we first started out, Pam, what was it about?
We did 12 breakfasts
At the
a
high
day the first couple of weeks.
At the high
an
school.
average of about 12 meals, yeah.
Right, so we brought that up to 30, and then Pam worked with the team to come up with some new ideas at the high school, and that really was what was driving that increase. So we're hoping to keep that at the beginning of the year.
So by
and do
the
better.
end of the year, we actually hit 100 breakfasts a day at the high school, so we were really happy with that increase. We went from 12.
Yeah.
From 12 to 100 kids we were able to feed, which is great at that level when they eat.
And credit to, Pam and her staff, because we had heard they're making these really good smoothies at the high school now, and I know that was something that you didn't have at the beginning that you adjusted.
Yes, it was, and that was actually, well, I was going to talk about later, but in the survey results, it came up a couple times as some of the students had suggested smoothies. And it was something that in our team meetings we were learning was already selling well in other districts. So it was already on our radar, but then the kids brought it up in the survey results, and so we tried them and they were an immediate hit. So.
And they're a reimbursable breakfast too.
Yes, yeah.
If we have the right components
So
to have cut
perfect.
fruit and all of that. So we're gonna hope to keep on that continuum. Average meals for the entire year was 669. October through May, average was 681. Our goal is to be over 700 a day. So we had a couple months that were 700, experimenting with menu planning. Of course, menu planning, some of it drives cost, drives participation, so there's a balance in between that. So anything you want to say about lunch? Okay. And then equivalent meals, which is what an equivalent meal is: a la carte, catering, adult meals divided by a factor. This last year was 4.360. It's going up to 4.87. So divided by that factor equals a meal. So that's what an equivalent meal is. And so total per day was 1,114. So we're headed in the right direction, and we're keep working on participation in all of the buildings, and to keep moving forward. So Pam's going to highlight our blueprint scrapbook digitally. Is someone?
Were you able to?
Do I have that one?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I thought the link. We talked about it.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
You can go to your email. Oh.
It's a Shutterfly link.
Oh my.
Yeah, if you want to move on, I'll send it to Paige.
Okay. No, it was what we created was an actual photo book from the year of pictures. So we will have. I was hoping to have the physical copy, but it looks like it got delayed in shipping, and it will be here by Friday. So and just missed today. But I was hoping to be able to pass it around. But it's something that we at Taher we do it every year, which is just kind of fun. It's just a picture book to go through the year. So I had started the scrapbook with Lucky Trade Day, which is something we do at the elementary school, where we put in each grade level. At each grade level, we put a sticker on the bottom of one tray. And so then it encourages kids to eat hot lunch. And then if they have the tray with a sticker, that we put together just a little prize bag, just, little trinkets, really. Nothing food related. We don't want to touch any allergies or food dyes or anything like that, but just little trinkets. So it's just kind of fun ways to engage the kids. The next one was we were able to utilize student-grown lettuce from the greenhouses and put that on our salad bars this year, which I love. I love to do that because the kids always get excited and then they want to eat the vegetables when they have a hand in growing them. And so I love that collaboration with the school, with the program always. That is so fun. Our next one was United Taste of America is a promotion that Taher does, and each month they highlight, we highlight a meal from different parts of the country. So the pictures that I had included is one we did fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread. So kind of a southern meal. We started with fresh collard greens, and I know I was at the elementary cooking that day, so we did, we did collard greens with some bacon and onion, and then we just tried to encourage the kids to each, try a little spoonful of them, just some different tastes that they may not. These were just our welcome back breakfast that we did last year, to welcome the staff back. Oh, there's so that's the United Taste of America. That was the collard greens and the fried chicken. Oh, macaroni and cheese and cornbread was the menu that day. And that was in all 3 schools.
Yeah. And the kids did eat the collard greens.
They did. We went through over 200 servings, I know, at the elementary school of the collard greens. So that was great. Okay, and so then the next one, and then we did have a couple chef visits with Chef Amanda, where she comes and prepares a dish. This was Korean pork tacos. She also made a cucumber salad that was really good that went with it. So she did that at the high school and the middle school, each on separate days. I'm just encouraging the kids to also try different foods that they may not have, but she prepares them all with fresh ingredients. I mean, it smelled delicious. I encourage anyone when she's here to stop by and try her lunches. The kids always get really excited when she's here. So then I think that helps encourage them to try something new too. And then our next one, that was that was her meal. They're so colorful and fresh. We couldn't believe the line of kids.
Yeah, the middle school kids were really excited.
They were really excited. Yeah. And then, these were some of the different, so the other thing that Taher does too is a harvest of the month. We have found a lot more often we can get kids to try it if we turn it into something sweet. So one month it was Meyer lemons. So I made fresh lemon bars in all 3 schools. We handed them out with a hot lunch. Another one was sweet cherries. So we decided to do a brownie and just put a cherry on top, which the kids really enjoyed. The other picture there was donuts that we just tried. Now, what's nice about these they're actually a whole grain donut, so they meet all of our requirements. Not all the kids realize that. But we sprinkled a little bit of the whole grain cereal on them as well, just to make them a little bit more colorful, and the kids get really excited, and we generally would sell out of those. And the picture on the far right are the smoothies, and they're a yogurt-based, we use yogurt and frozen fruit to make those smoothies. So that, like Lisa said, they are completely a reimbursable meal. They count as a breakfast. They meet all the components. So,
my kids ever complain about food? I'm going back to the pictures.
It's only because they're choosing not to try it. Another fun thing that we did this year that we'd like to do a couple more times going forward next year, was Kids in the Kitchen. Chef Amanda, again, came to help us with this. We chose 5th graders. We're all given the opportunity. We had, I think it was 15 kids bring back permission slips, so that was great. That was about the number we were looking for, so it was perfect. We didn't have to, and so we made apple pies for them to take home and bake from fresh apples. So they were able to, we purchased plastic utensils, so they were able to learn knife skills and measuring. They cut all the apples. We measured this, the spices and everything, and they pre-filled we had pre-baked pie shells. So they filled those, topped them, and then they were able to bring them home and bake them. So it was really, they had a lot of fun with that. Chef Amanda also presented at the career fair. She made fresh eclairs for all the students to go through, and she kind of just spoke generally about Taher, but also just as a chef position to the children to kind of, as a potential career, and this is one of the aspects, is school nutrition. So she kind of shared information on that and sampled the eclairs, which I think they were probably more excited about.
For sure.
And then the last picture there was I baked our staff little fresh homemade rhubarb breads for school superhero day, and thanked them for being incredible staff, because they really are. The kitchen staff that we have here are incredible.
All right, and so,
Yeah, I think that
and
was
then
kind
we
of-
don't
yeah.
have a picture about it, but I did tack it on. We did have the administrative review in December, which is a very intensive review with the state. And between Pam and the district, they collaborated to successfully go through that review. So we don't have a picture of it, but we could have piles of paper.
Yeah,
But I
piles
just
of
wanted to
files.
acknowledge that. That can be a stressful time in every school nutrition director's life, which happens, and administration, actually, they changed the rule. It seems like they
Yeah.
change the rules sometimes. You know, just like health inspectors, what's good for one health inspector might not go with the next one sometimes, depending on who it is, so.
Yeah.
And any questions on that or the overview?
Did you coordinate today?
We didn't,
we didn't.
actually.
Thank you.
I know when she walked in, she's, oh, okay, no, we did not communicate about that. But we were-
Not about what we were wearing.
No, it's funny,
Thank you
so.
for everything you're doing for the kids.
I love to feed children, I just do.
So just quickly, program goals is always to meet, exceed budget. So we monitor the program, monthly, weekly, and really to meet that budget. Now with Eric as the business manager, whom I've worked with before, he's also a driving force on, challenging us to, meet the numbers and do all of that. So, we collaborated yesterday, and so that was a good thing on the year end, and results for last year. So we're really looking forward to working with Eric as well in the district. A couple things, how do we increase participation? Well, all the things that you just kind of saw that, putting energy into the program, monitoring it. If that's not working, let's figure out what will. The new campaign for next year, that is replacing United Tastes of America. It's called Swavery Adventures, and it's where exploring sweet and savory food come together. So each month there'll be a highlight. The posters will be arriving. They'll be in the cafeterias, and we'll be doing some fun things centered around that. And again, we're going to market the program at open houses, be at the kindergarten, middle school orientation, because I think it's important for kindergarten, to really embrace the kids in kindergarten and show them what school meals are all about and get them excited at a young age. And if we do that, normally they'll eat with us in middle school and high school, and they'll leave with wonderful eating habits, unless they go to Quick Trip over lunch. I'm just kidding about that, but that is Quick Trip's part of their marketing, to actually build right by a high school. That's part of their marketing plan, but anyway. I don't know for sure, anyway, and then I guess focus on free and, I've been through a number of those projects. Free and reduced students not participating. So again, really understanding what percentage of the kids that are qualified for free and reduced benefits are participating. If it's low, then why, and trying to fix that problem. And then again, we're gonna meet and talk about the breakfast program at the elementary. That's kind of where we fell short by about 100 a day when we first started out. And we want to revisit the operations there and see if we can do something to combat that. And then, of course, control costs. And we would like to, we didn't get it off the ground last year as a teacher salary program. We're going to work on that for this year, because we know the teachers would like that program back into the program. So, yeah, so the ways that we communicate, the Food for Life app, we have the nutritionals right on your phone if you download the Food for Life app. It's also on the district website. Harvest of the Month engagement, Healthy to a Teen newsletter, which we should be sending out to each of the teachers. It's also posted on the website. It takes that Harvest of the Month and it actually has a recipe on it, which is kind of engaging and interesting to utilize. And then the Swavery, we'll be doing something monthly. The other thing that just came along the pipeline, and I'll just mention it because we'll talk about it more as the year goes on, but what is really the Food for Life initiative? And when I think about it, and I'll be celebrating my 25th year with Tahoe on July 31st, but when I think about it and where we started, we were looking at taking unhealthy things out of the ingredients that we offer way before the rest of the world does. And, you know, and just trans fat free and some of that, and just kind of circling back around, you'll hear more about the Food for Life initiative, which we follow but I don't know that we've marketed it very well. So this year we're going to be marketing it as a company to all of our customers and our stakeholders. So, great. Any questions?
Can I ask, so
Sure.
you know, all your goals and the like kind of seasonal struggles with participation and the free and reduced students not participating, is there anything that, from your perspective, the district could be doing better or that we could focus more on in order to help you achieve those things?
Well, there's probably a few. I mean, when I think about, again, we had this discussion just recently, before COVID and before the, you know, paper, don't send the paper menus home with elementary because we want to save on paper. If you think about it, some of us that have gone through, we put the menu on the refrigerator, we'd have it on there with a magnet, and we'd have a conversation as a parent, hey, what are you gonna take for lunch? So now I think a parent has to, and you tell me, because I think some of you are parents, but you have to really dig for that menu on your phone or on the app and say, okay, what's for lunch? And, you know, there's a way for parents to actually print that menu off of the Food for Life or off of the website and stick it on. But then that's a lot of steps for a parent to look at. So sometimes I think that has kind of impacted our participation as a whole society at the elementary level. So, you know, kind of thinking about that aspect. And I think just as a community to just do what you've been doing is just really encourage kids to try things. And we also understand the financial impact, you know, of paid meals. If you have 3 kids and now they're at $3.25, that's $9 whatever a day. However, you can't get that meal, you know, at a McDonald's either. And so just, you know, we understand those struggles. So that's sometimes why I think sometimes Chicken Nugget Day is still the, you know, most popular, because if a student only gets 3 times to pick lunch, then pick the most popular processed. But I don't know. But I think it's just changing those eating habits. I mean, it's going to be, I believe as a society, we have to get back to the basics and stay away from processed foods. But it's encouraging kids to try those things. So encouragement, I guess, that was a long-winded answer for that. And then we're just working with the districts and reanalyzing the process and procedures that are going on. What can we do differently to get more kids to eat, especially at breakfast time at the elementary school? So, I mean, I think, you know, evaluating that we're on the right track of analyzing that. So, but thank you for asking.
Absolutely, thank you.
So.
We print the menu every month, so.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Awesome. I was thinking about this.
We do
summer.
every month.
Good for you. So how do we get everybody to do that?
You know, we go through the whole month with them and they have to decide then.
Yeah.
Because I tell them that's how I decide what groceries to buy.
Well, that's a
So
good
like
idea.
we put packed or unpacked for each kid.
So you print it as well? You do, awesome. So I was thinking about developing a magnet to hand out at registrations to put that menu on. Hey, take this school menu magnet and use it for your refrigerator. Do you think parents would embrace that?
Maybe. I'll be honest,
I'll
I
take
did better when the teacher gave it to me than me printing it myself. I'm not gonna lie, but I might just be that parent.
No, I think that's probably more than just you. That's what I've seen in trends in the last 6 or 7 years.
What about a
You know?
magnet with a QR code on it, so you could just scan the thing on your fridge?
I like that.
So that would link to the.
That's a
On
good
the
idea.
magnet.
Yeah.
But
He
we
won't even
could
charge
do
you
that.
for that.
I get some eclairs for that one.
Yeah, those are perfect. That's a great idea. Have the QR code on the magnet for that particular district.
And then the menu's on your
Printed.
fridge, and then you just can scan it.
That's a
I
good
like
idea.
that.
That's $1 million idea. I'm gonna take that with me. Well, actually, we'll go right to that. Yeah, because magnets are not that expensive to really produce. So, I mean, we could, especially now with ChatGPT or whatever. That's the next new age, right? What are we gonna do with that one? Well,
Helpful too, if you, just thinking along those lines, because I know once we get on the website, it gets tricky, because I don't wanna just put a blanket link, because the menus are different from school to school.
Right.
So if you had those QR codes specific to, this one is Levi, if you got 3 kids at the same school, or at different schools, put them all on the refrigerator, my middle schooler can go with their phone, scan the QR code.
So the QR code by building.
Yeah, by building.
Yeah, because on it goes to the link, but you have to do the drop down to get to that
Right,
building.
and that's gonna get
That's what-
confusing.
That's,
Mm-hmm.
that's a
Could we
good.
just make like one QR code with a landing page that has a simple link to each building?
There is one,
Oh,
there's
okay.
district website
But
is
then they
already
could
got
do it
it.
even specific
Sure, yeah.
to each building, so then you have,
That's, yeah,
I mean, it just labeled on the top,
So then
just
just
lunch
send them-
menu.
yeah,
Stacy McKenna's lunch menu.
yeah, that's a good, and they can just put the magnet right on the refrigerator. I'm so glad I mentioned the magnet. It was a brainstorm that I had doing year ends a couple weeks ago, it's like, what if we would do, so thank you, yeah, that's great, okay.
Any
Appreciate your
other
partnership.
questions? All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
if it goes company-wide, I will acknowledge that. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Next, looks like we get presentation from WASB on parliamentary procedures and Robert rules.
All right, well, Bob just got in. I'll give you a little bit of background for those of you that don't know Mr. Butler. I think the first time I met Bob was probably in about 2011 or so. He was, I believe, was working with Edgewood at the time when I was doing my my licensure for superintendency. Some other big-time attorneys like Shana Lewis come in, and then they sort of mentor these aspiring administrators. And I've known Bob since then. Have worked with him a long time in union negotiations. And then when I became superintendent, Bob in my last district was board legal counsel, like Boardman and Clark is here in Evansville. So he's got many strengths, but one of them is in this area, which we've had some recent discussions on, and that's why we've invited him here tonight. And I did give Bob some background on some of the things that we have struggled with. The primary one, and I think a lot of the districts do struggle with this, is there's a motion, and then we get an amendment to the motion, and about a month ago, then we got an amendment to the amendment. How do we get back through the proper procedures to that either original or that, and that's what we're looking for tonight. And then I even gave the example from in an email with Bob about just at our last meeting when the consent agenda, we wanted one item removed. The discussion came up, do we need a second for that? Do we need a motion for that? And so I'd asked Bob if you can really focus on motion making. That seems to be where we as this current board struggle with. And so he's an expert and a fantastic guy. He is from the East Coast though. So.
Yeah, that's right. Upstate New York originally, but been here for 38 years, so been a little stay in Wisconsin. Thanks so much for the invitation, greatly appreciate it, and for the nice kind words of Nate. And it's good to see Eric again, so you got a good crew captaining the ship. But I do want to make it an informative night for you, and just to make you know, because it's a hot, nice summer night, I'm not going to cover everything in this book. Does anybody own one of these? This is Robert's Rules. All right, so Melissa's shaking her head that she does. So the good news is that you have a policy that says that you follow this for small boards. Right? So that trims this down. And your policy also has a really nice statement in it that even if you somehow don't follow some procedural aspect of Robert's Rules, provided we know how you voted and it was properly posted, you're good to go. So this is more just kind of think, okay, how are we going to make the meetings more efficient, et cetera. And so Nate he was kind enough to let me know about a couple of things that he had questions on. So I'm going to focus on those rules of order. And, I talked about how right away, they're really meant to make your meetings more efficient. They're not really meant to stifle discussion or debate, et cetera. It's so you have a set process. So you're not arguing about process, you're focusing on the substance of what you want to decide. And it helps you prioritize your time and effort. And so that's also really important just from a launching pad standpoint of have you as a board and admin team, leadership team had a conversation about, what is our shared expectation for how long the typical board meeting goes? Because if their chairperson then has to kind of go, well, how am I going to guide debate throughout this, or when's it appropriate to call the question? those sort of things, so you have that kind of shared understanding. Because I've been both representing districts for 35 years, but also been on a board and been a president of a board. And I always started with, how long do you folks want to be here typically? And granted, sometimes you have more controversial issues than others, but if I want to kind of get the debate going, it's not because I don't want to hear from board member A, B, or C. It's just, you guys told me you wanted a 2-hour window, right? So some of that is to be efficient with it. And how you run things, you've got that policy I mentioned. So I think the policy's fine. Okay, so it wasn't like I looked at the policy, oh, you should suggest A, B, and C changes to it. It looks good. But we do have certain places where state law tells us what to do. And then the good thing of having a meeting like this is if you have deviation from the Roberts rules in what you actually do in practice, and if the practice works, there's nothing that says you can't codify it. Right? So you can't write things down. And so, for example, one might be, do we second motions? Do you guys second motions? All right, so you do. All right, so that's something you can do. You can continue doing it. There are some districts that, because they're small bodies, they explicitly put in the policy, second on a motion is not required. You know, so that's a deviation they have from Roberts rules. Not recommending it or not recommending it, it's just something, as an example, you have that flexibility as to how you do it. And then granted, sometimes you're gonna have to make a decision during a meeting. There's gonna be some things on the call. So when Nate's talking about amendments to motions, when you do that, there's a lot of things you can be flexible with. Things start getting a little bit complicated. You can kind of take a step back and go, all right, we're a couple of chains down of amendments here to the main motion. Is there any possibility that the individual who made the main motion would just withdraw it and we'd start over again? That happens a lot when you're looking at making policy language tweaks. So we'll get into that in a little bit of detail. So again, as I said, most of this stuff, it's dictated by this, but you have deviation from it, and there's certain places where the law says you have to do things. So looking at it from the legal requirements, what's going to trump everything else is going to be your open meetings law. So there will be things in here that'll say you can do things that you can't do if you didn't post it on the agenda and it wasn't properly posted. All right, so this is not a default on that. There's also specific things like when you go into closed session. And that statute's been around since 1980, basically untouched, but we got a court decision just earlier this year that held that we have to be a little bit more specific when we go into closed session if the closed session involves like competitive bargaining reasons. So if you're looking to purchase a parcel of land or enter into a contract with a vendor, we have to give a little bit more of an explanation of why we have to go into closed session for that versus just citing the statute. Right? So that's a bit of a change, but otherwise that stayed the same. You all have the ability, any one of you, to ask a roll call vote on any item, with some exceptions. So when we talk about the consent agenda question, maybe I'll handle it right now. So a consent agenda, there's no need for a vote if I wanted to pull something from it. An individual board member could just say, I'd like to pull the, let's say you had on the consent agenda, the rehiring of coaches or advisors. I'd like to pull the consideration of the reappointment of Butler for a soccer coach or something. And you could pull that. That doesn't need a second. That doesn't need a vote. That just automatically gets taken out of the consent agenda. Doesn't mean that that reappointment of that person is defeated. Doesn't mean that it's approved. It's just a procedural element of it. Robert's Rules doesn't really talk about that to any degree. So you won't really find that in the book, but that's just a way of how you're setting up your agendas. So there's nothing that's required there. You do have some other specific voting requirements, like if you're going to change dollar amounts in between funds in an approved budget, or if you are going to change an actual tax that you're going to be levied. So provided you're underneath the revenue limit, you could take a 2/3 vote to go back up to the revenue limit, et cetera. And then we have some special voting requirements for approving teacher contracts, administrator contracts. So it's have to be majority vote of the full membership of the board. The preceding ones I mentioned are a 2/3 vote of the entire membership of the board. So even if not all the board members were present, we still have to hit those numbers. Some other things where Robert's Rules is going to deviate a little bit from the law. And this, we also had a court decision on this spring in the use of written ballots versus secret ballots. So secret ballots, the law has been consistent, again, going back to 1980. The Open Meetings Law was codified in that you can only use secret ballots for electing an officer. You don't have to, it's a choice, but that's whenever you can do it. You can use signed ballots. Well, we had a Court of Appeals decision, and those Court of Appeals decisions are binding on other school districts or other courts in the state, unless they went up to the state Supreme Court and got overturned. And in that particular case, let's say you were filling a board vacancy, and you thought, well, let's just write down who your preferred candidate is, and you write on a piece of paper. Well, A, those votes are actually public records that someone could see, and B, what this court said is you actually have to announce at the meeting how each person voted. So Melissa voted for Jane Doe, Ryan voted for John Smith. You'd have to go through and delineate how each particular person voted on that. So that's a bit of a change. Again, if you had asked us a couple years ago, we would have said, yeah, it's definitely a public record, recommend it, but we don't know if it's required. Now it's, yes, it's required because of this court decision. So that's where we kind of get. I think what we're gonna get to is just now onto the motion thing that Nate really wanted me to address. So let's look at how you handle things. So first off, everybody on the board can participate unless they personally recuse themselves due to a conflict of interest, or they just say, you know, I'm just not informed enough. You know, it could be whatever reason. I don't have to disclose the reason for my abstention, either from the discussion or from the vote, but I can choose to do so. Let's say hypothetically, you had an application coming forward, my wife was applying to be a coach. I might want it, I might say, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and I'm actually going to physically leave the room. So whomever is the school board clerk, at least I saw you with the pen and paper. So the clerk, I would respectfully ask that go in the minutes that I exited during this discussion and this vote. And then I go out, and then when I was done, so you guys were done, you can come and grab me. The benefit of handling it that way is if later on anybody challenges the hire or something, says I influenced it. No, he actually left the room and it's in the minutes. He actually asked for that to happen. But otherwise, everybody gets to vote. President, clerk, everybody else gets to participate. And as I mentioned, anybody can ask for that roll call vote. You don't have to do a roll call vote to go in closed session, but it's recommended. I recommend it, so that way you can ascertain how everybody did. It only adds a couple of seconds to do it that way. I don't know if that's what your practice is, but I do recommend doing that. So let's look at the thing that Nate was talking about that might be of interest, and then we can just open it up for conversation about it. So first off, underneath the open meetings law, depending on how you post things, you have to first decide, can we actually have a motion and act on that? You know, if it just said discussion of rules of order policy, that would lead me to a member of the public to say, you're not actually going to change it that night. If you said discussion and potential action, all right, I have it. And so just being careful of how those agendas are delineated from the beginning. If you say discussion in one area and then discussion and action in another, or business as a header and then discussion in another area, someone may interpret that as saying, well, you didn't actually apprise us of the fact that you were going to act. So let's just be cognizant of that, then we'll go into it. So how the motion is made, anybody can make the motion, right? So there's this belief that the president can't do it. Typically the president doesn't, but president's elected to be on the board, president can make a motion as much as anybody else. Then, as I mentioned, your policy, you still have that second the motion, so that's what happens there. Again, you could change the policy if you so chose to, but again, yours presently has it. And then I always recommend that the presiding officer, whether it's committee, you guys have committees?
Yes.
Okay. So whether it's committee chair or board president, repeats the motion. So Melissa makes the original motion, seconded by Ryan, and it's repeated by the president to make sure that we've captured it properly. Right? It might turn said to you as the clerk and get an idea for it. And then we call for discussion. So recognizing each speaker in turn, do you have any sort of practice on that, or is it just pretty much whoever raises their hand?
Whoever just starts talking.
Whoever starts talking.
Yeah.
So recognized by the chair or just straight? Okay, so that's fine. So that's kind of like when you're ad hoc practices. When everything's going great, that works fine. If, it'll make me the bad guy. Let's say I got elected to the board and you're just like, she just is always talking and nobody else can get in on this. Then you might look at, do you have to be recognized by the chair? Because you could do that underneath your policy. Some districts actually, and there's pros and cons to this, they might go through and ask each individual board member. If it's a high-level question about going to, let's say, referendum for a building project or exceeding the revenue limits, you might think, yeah, this is really important, everybody should chime in. If it's some other matter that you'd say is more routine, so the reappointment of someone to be, you know, an assistant club advisor, you might go, well, that, I don't have to ask every person on the board how they feel about that topic. Doesn't mean they can't contribute, but just may not be something built into it. So that's a stylistic issue there. And then how those people are recognized, both for the conversation. So now we've got the motion out there. So at a certain point in time, someone can call the question and say, we now want to vote. And we ask for everybody who voted for the motion, everybody opposed, and then it's not listed up there, but it also should say, and anybody who's not voting. Because otherwise, you know, if there's silence, you may run into later on of, well, were they supportive of this or not? And it makes your job easier as the clerk too to know how it is.
Just to clarify, Bob, with your call to question, let's say it seems like everybody's had a chance to weigh in. We might be circling back to the same kinds of comments or questions. That's where somebody could say, I think we've heard from everybody now.
Absolutely.
Let's just take the vote.
Right, right.
Does call to question need a second?
It does if someone, I mean, it depends on the level of formality you have. You know, if you, technically what it's gonna have is a vote to have it approved or call the question. But if you don't, the average district for the average topic doesn't do it. It's just everybody got a chance to talk? Okay, let's take our vote now. That's probably what you guys do, right? So when things get a little bit more rigid or there's factions or something, then that sometimes becomes more of a point of it. But again, remember, these rules can't really stop things from happening. So you can go through it on that standpoint. So let's say we've got our outcome, but let's say that initial motion, we wanted to make some changes. So generally speaking, underneath Robert's rules, any board member at any time, whether I make the motion or not, I can propose an amendment to it. And the benefit of that, as is noted here, is that avoids everybody making the rush to make the motion at the same time, you know, on something of substance. Very frequently, if the president says, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn, in my experience, that's one where everybody does kind of rush to make the motion. But other than that, you know, the flexibility to make amendments says, all right, I don't have to get out of the chute and have everything pre-drafted. Now on some, and Nate, I don't know if you and or Eric do this, on some matters, the administration may come to you with a proposed motion. You guys do, right? So that sometimes helps speeds things up, particularly if it's something, let's say you were working on the financial area, and they've got a specific motion that they want you to consider because you're doing some short-term borrowing with the bank, right? So that one is probably gonna be a little bit more clear right away versus you're going through a policy change and you're changing verbiage on it. You might not have that language all worked out before you make the motion on it. So once those things are done, how we approach it is, first we have to see, is this motion first we have the motion, then any amendments that are made to it. The term that's used in Robert's rules is germane. So it can't be like, well, I make a motion, let's say it was, we're going to spend $250,000 on a kitchen renovation to put in new stoves that are more energy efficient or work better, whatever it happens to be. I can't say, all right, my motion is to add on to that to also spend $50,000 on a new logo on the basketball court. Right? It's not germane at all to the original motion. And on the flip side, I also can't do what's kind of like a nested poison pill of, the motion was to spend $250,000 to renovate the kitchen. I would amend that to insert the word not to spend. Right? That's just a negative vote. That's just me voting no, right? But otherwise, when we talk about the number of times a motion can be amended, there's no limit, but there are limits on the number of motions to amend an amendment. Right? So I know it's a little confusing. So I'll jump ahead because it's sometimes easier to see this graphic, then we'll go back. So the main motion, the first one right out of the chute, is to spend that $250,000 on the kitchen renovation. Now maybe the main motion, when it was made and seconded, said, and we'd authorize that expenditure to commence September 1st of 2025. and Eric wasn't in the meeting at that time. He comes in a bit later and says, actually, folks, we're gonna get some USDA grants for this, but their grant money doesn't show up till January 1st of 2026. So then somebody says, okay, I'm gonna have my primary amendment, my branch off of the trunk to change that date. We could vote on that in isolation, right? So we vote on that change of the date in isolation. And so then we make the motion to change the date from September 1st, 2025, January 1st, 2026. Board member 1 makes that motion, board member 2 seconds it, president repeats it, then we have the discussion. And we go through that whole discussion piece, and now we're solely voting on that date change. We're not voting on anything else. So my vote on the date change does not mean that I'm supporting the whole thing. I'm just supporting that piece on it. And if it's approved, well, then the president's now gonna repeat the new motion with spending the $250,000 on the kitchen renovations effective January 1st, 2026. All right. If it fails, we're back at the September 1st, 2025. Because I might be like, you know what? It's great, we're gonna get that money, but we can use that for some other purpose in the food service program. Let's do whatever else. So that's kind of the order of things. If it's approved, we're now back to the main one with the amendment. If it's rejected, we just have the main element. So this is where I think, Nate, when you asked the question, this is where things get a little bit more complicated. So let's say the first vote was, we had the main motion to have it September 1st, 2025. Then Eric says, well, the USDA funds don't show up until January 1st, 2025. So I make that motion as a board member, and that's seconded. And then somebody says, oh, but the only real reason we're going to that date is contingent upon receipt of USDA grant money, right? Yeah. So let's say we do it January 1st, 2026, if the district applies for and gets the grant approved. All right, so now we're gonna vote on that. We're just gonna vote on that secondary piece first. We're voting just on that. If that passes, right now that's part of the whole thing. If it fails, we're back just to that primary amendment of just January 1st of 2026. If I tried to say, oh, it's the January 1st of 2026 if we get the USDA funds, and then I said, you know what, and I'd like to say, provided that we actually get the money, it's not like a grant that's offered and then they can rescind it. Well, now I'm to a third amendment. And so at that point in time, what's easier to do is just to go to the person who made the primary amendment and ask them, do you want to do a motion to substitute, to replace the new verbiage? And you could do a motion to substitute for that, or you could have a motion to withdraw that primary amendment. So I always remind people of, remember the motion to withdraw or the motion to sub, and go from there, all right? And I think we keep things, and this comes up a lot in policy or contract stuff, where there's a lot of discussion back and forth. If we keep those things in mind, you can be more efficient that way by just going, instead of doing all of these branches, twigs, and leaves, it's easier just to go, why don't we just do a motion to substitute the new corrected one? Now Eric's given us these dates and these contingencies, and we just supplant the whole prior motion with the new one. That's oftentimes more time, it's more efficient with your time than going through multiple layers of amendments.
In that situation, which I think we could have probably done what we were talking about a month ago, Bob, does that have to go back to then the person that made the original motion for the amendment and then get approval from the person that seconded it?
Well, once they turn it over, once the motion, so let's say the original motion was seconded, at that point, it's your motion as a group.
Okay.
So there's, from a, how do I split it up? From a Robert's Rules piece versus just being friendly with each other, you know, it's the friendly amendment piece is really not in Robert's Rules. It's not there. At the same time, you might look at it and say, are you okay if we do the following? Yeah, because there's some pride of authorship in the original one, which I mean, might be, hey, I have no pride of authorship whatsoever. This is worded way better than what I thought it was going to be. But once it's seconded, it's the group that makes the determination on it. So, but what can happen is the person can make a motion to substitute. That could be the thing. If I was the original board member one, I could say, I'm gonna do a motion to substitute, and then you could vote on that, and then the other one's just gone. It doesn't mean you've passed the issue, it just means we've taken motion A, we now sideline that, and motion B has taken its place.
Can only the person who brought the original motion make the motion to substitute?
No,
Anyone can.
no, anybody could just do it at that point, because otherwise you could just vote down the motion.
Sure.
Right, you could just say, I'm for the $250,000, but I don't like the way this thing is worded, I'm gonna vote no, and then we're gonna come back with something else. Or Eric might tell you, yeah, we're gonna spend that money, but it's also tied into us doing some short-term borrowing or something. You may not have known about.
The motion to substitute needs to be seconded and voted on.
Correct.
Okay.
A motion to withdraw, can that also be made by anybody?
Yes.
So what's,
But it's typically, in practice, they most commonly are made by the person who originally did it, just as a matter of parliamentary courtesy. But someone could do, I make a motion to substitute, and now I might, because it's open for debate, so at that point in time, as the original author, I might argue why that doesn't make sense for whatever reason. But ultimately, once the motion's seconded, the motion belongs to the group. So the group can come up with doing something and say, yeah, this is gonna make our time more efficient here.
so if you're in a situation where you're debating things, but it seems like there's an agreement of the majority that we're not doing whatever the debated motion is, you could either call the question and do the vote and vote it down, or you can make a motion to withdraw it, get 4 votes on that. Is it the same result, or is there a substantive difference?
There's the substantive differences, because the motion to substitute and the motion to withdraw and potentially replace isn't coming to a final conclusion on the expenditure. You know, if you vote 4-3 not to spend the $250,000, we'll get into that later on rescinding at this meeting, or excuse me, reconsider at this meeting or rescind at a future meeting. Versus if we do a motion to substitute, we're just taking the verbiage. So let's say it's 2 sentences of motion 1, we're putting that on the sideline, and now we got the verbiage of motion 2, which is probably still again germane. It has to be germane, and may just be, you look at it and say, this grammar is so much better, right? It might have the same outcome, and then you're gonna vote to say, do we actually wanna pass and do what motion 2 says? So it's really a mechanism to be more efficient, and from the standpoint of, even though the motion's gone to the whole group after I was the original author, I just find when boards do it of like, I put the thing out there, and then Melissa has got, you know, I think we probably should have worded it this way and say this because you're using passive voice and you don't have the Oxford comma and you got X, Y, or Z going on. And all that stuff's pointed out. It's just like, yeah, I do agree. Just so everybody knows before you vote, I am fully in support of the motion to substitute and or, you know what, I'll make a motion to withdraw even though I initially had it on the table because Eric's not right here at this point in time in the meeting to clarify the USDA grant. You know, and then, so either way that you do it can work, but it's different than if you just want to be done with it, then you'd either vote down the motion to substitute, the motion to withdraw, and you just vote and the majority ends it, and you're done and you're on to the next item. The only thing that could change that is we'll get into it a bit on the motion to reconsider for that same board meeting. Thank you.
What's the big difference between to change or substitute versus amend?
Well, the amend is more, I'm tweaking. The substitute is, we're in essence starting from scratch, right? It's like I'm taking the whole sentence and everything and just I'm saying, we're not gonna talk about motion 1, we're going with motion 2 now. So the amendment piece would be, let's say Eric and Nate had brought forward a sample motion for you and you just had to tweak a word or two or the effective date. You wanted to wait 6 months or you wanted to do it earlier 6 months. That's definitely here on the amendment phase versus the substitute is, and I should have mentioned when you talk about working with boards, like we have a board of directors and I sit in on all the board of directors meetings and occasionally they'll make a motion and then I'll just say this, I'm not a member of the board, but just raise my hand and say, would you want to think of maybe wording it this way because what you're doing might do A, B, and C. oh, that's true, yeah, we would like to do that. Okay, well, this is how you go about doing it. It's more time efficient. So I would think of amendments as being tweaks and motion to substitutes of we're just starting fresh as if the other thing didn't happen, because it's easier to just replace two full sentences than go and insert this date, insert this comma, do X, Y, or
So
Z.
kind of where we got in the weeds with the school to career coordinator, we had an amendment to an amendment to an amendment to an amendment, basically. So at that point, it may have just been a better idea for
Yeah.
somebody to say, okay, instead of trying to keep all of this straight, let's make a motion to substitute. The original motion was blah, 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 blah. This will be our
Right.
So if we're down the rabbit hole on amendments, we don't have to process through them before we make a motion to substitute. We can just make a motion.
Well, once they're seconded and approved, then you do have to vote on that particular amendment. So
Okay.
you could have a situation here, so let's say I'm on the secondary amendment about, and tying it to the USD, the actual receipt of the USDA grant funds. We might vote down that amendment and then say, okay, we've spent a lot of time doing the wordsmithing. Can we entertain, I'll make a motion to substitute, and then you list out the 5 or 6 different changes that you have.
I see.
And then that whole thing, and then you see, does that pass? That only puts it on the floor again. You're still not approving the substance of it. You're just approving the swap of what you're gonna talk about.
So if we have a standing amendment, we have to vote on it before we can then
Correct.
vote.
Right.
Propose a substitution.
Correct.
Okay.
So if we have 2 amendments, you gotta vote down both amendments?
No, they go in order. So if you think about it, the main one is the thing that the first 2 people put out there. And anybody can make these primary or secondary amendments, but the hierarchy is, and we use the tree analogy because I think it's easiest to understand. The twigs get voted on separately from the branch, right? And the branch gets separately voted on from the trunk. The trunk is the main motion. That's really what you're about. And at some point, versus drawing all these branches and twigs off of the main motion, that's when you get to, it's just more efficient to scrap the main motion and start over.
You're getting a new trunk.
We can't have any standing branches or twigs.
You have to vote on them first.
So you'd have to vote no on all those.
You don't have to
You
vote.
just have to process, you have to vote through.
Yes.
Vote
Yeah.
yes, but then
That just changes.
they just have to be processed through.
The tree has to be bare in order
Yeah.
for us to get a new trunk.
I think that's what it is.
Well, I mean, or you've approved the secondary, let's say it could either be bare or you've approved them. And then somebody says, you know what, we've approved branch 1 and 2, and then I go, you know what we didn't add in was X. Now we're kind of default in the spot of, we gotta do a motion to substitute.
Yeah, I see.
All right, so just think about it as, you're only really doing a branch and a twig. If things get beyond that, then a motion to substitute or a motion to withdraw, and either one of the 2. Now, if you do a motion to withdraw, then I still have something sitting there, something new has to come out.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're like, well, the motion to withdraw just passes, and you're like, you know, we're just not ready for this. We need to set it back to the policy committee to do more
Or
work on it.
we approved several amendments and then realized, oh, we want to change those again. And then that's when we just withdraw the whole thing.
That's when I would do the motion to substitute. Or if you still want to do with that night, right? And like I said, most of the time, in my experience, it comes up when the policy committee has a draft policy. People start pointing out, well, I think it would sound better if this, because I think parents might view it this way, and that's not really our intent. And you start getting into, okay, we've made too many changes here. We're not bundling all of those changes into one primary amendment.
Yeah.
You know?
So you do branch 1, branch 2, say, we're gonna substitute. You vote on a substitution, vote on branch 2, 1, and then the substitution gets voted on?
No, once you pass, so this can go a myriad of different ways, but I think the most efficient way is, you got your main motion that's already passed. We're doing primary amendment first. So a primary amendment is made, let's say, using my example, changing the date.
Main motion that's already passed or been seconded?
It's seconded.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's seconded, it's on the floor. So that's on the floor. Now we got the primary amendment, where it's just to change the date. At that point in time, let's say beyond the date, the conversation is, is if we're gonna change the date, I think when Bob first put this motion out, it's missing some other components. That's probably the time for efficiency, just to go, do we wanna do a motion to withdraw or a motion to substitute right then? Because then we don't get into all the branch, we don't get into the branch and the twig and trying to, it's oftentimes my experience, it's a lot easier to scrap the original motion, restart it after you've had the conversation, because then people can figure it out.
At that point, you do have a standing amendment to change the date. You'd have to vote on
Oh, you'd have
that.
to vote on that.
Yes.
You'd have to vote on that. So that's either gonna go up or down. And you might vote no on it, saying, I'm not opposed to January 1st in of itself, but I think there's other tweaks we have to make, and I think it'd be more efficient for us if we just passed a motion to substitute or direct the administration to come back with something that's a little bit clearer for what we want.
So the tree is like the first motion, the tree can only handle like 2 twigs, like technical,
We had
small.
one branch and one twig.
Right,
That's it.
and if it goes further than that, we need to hopefully vote it down, amendment, and then do a substitute, because a substitute is it's a larger thing which needs its own trunk, so.
You got it.
Okay.
You
You
got it.
don't have to vote down the amendment.
You don't have to vote it down, but it's an option.
You have to
Go through
vote
the process.
for it.
You have to go through the
Against it.
process, yeah.
And so,
Technical versus huge substance.
You voted for it and he didn't like it, and no one said, I want a substitution, you're stuck with it.
You're stuck with the.
You're just discussing it. You still haven't passed the
You
whole
haven't passed the,
thing.
you haven't passed the
Oh,
trunk,
yeah,
you
you're right.
just passed the change
you're right.
to the.
Yeah, so I mean,
You're
so
right,
let's,
I got it.
so let's say, my date one and then contingent on the USDA funding. Let's say that passes, and then you realize there's still more things we need to do to this. Then you could just say, let's do the motion to substitute or motion to withdraw and start from scratch. And then when the new one comes up, then you could decide, well, now I don't need to do as many amendments or tweaks to it, because we've, in essence, corrected it in a more informal manner that's frankly more expeditious. It's just a lot faster than, well, I would have voted for it if they had put the additional financing in, that kind of thing.
To be clear, Bob, then the, where was I going with this now? You've got, I'll come back. I need to think this through a little bit
Well,
further.
maybe, so I guess my question would be, if the main motion has 2 amendments that passed, and we say we want to substitute that main motion with those amendments,
The whole thing gets subbed. The
the
whole,
whole thing.
yeah, because once
So we
you've
don't have
approved
to-
the amendments, the whole thing gets subbed.
So like that main motion that has been amended is like sucked out and replaced by
The whole
whatever.
thing, the whole thing gets going. So that's what I've got up here. This just what I find to be a lot more. Now, this one says a new main motion to take the place of the pending motion. So, because you're gonna incorporate, if you let's say you pass those, the date change should have been the January 1st. Everybody agreed on that. And then you just said, yeah, we really should make this contingent on the USDA. There's no element of controversy in it. Then I just put all of that in the new trunk.
And if you've got a motion and a second on those, you're saying that's the board's now, so anybody could make that vote for a motion for a substitution.
Correct.
Okay, doesn't have to go back to the original.
Yeah, and I know people, and I've been guilty of this myself too, and I think it's more of an indicator that from a decorum standpoint, if I say, I think that's fine, I think I would view that as a friendly change or something, so that people don't view of like, I'm gonna go home that night stewing because my motion wasn't the one that was voted on, right? But
So
there's,
to the point of what Crystal was saying, though, the twigs have to go with the trunk regardless.
If they put.
If they.
if you vote, if the main motion is on the floor and 2 amendments pass, then you're voting on that trunk, the branch, and the twig.
They come as a
That's all
package.
together. If that gets defeated, all right, then you're starting fresh with anything. Or if you've got that and you look at it and go, well, I still think we need to make some language tweaks to it. My options are either I vote no, and we've defeated it and we start fresh, or to keep things moving and also like show, all right, I'm not really opposed to the money in the kitchen renovation, but I think we need to add some other things in, then anybody can make the motion to substitute and you do that. So the motion to substitute for me saves a ton of time as you get through this stuff. And again,
Remember that. Henceforth.
if it's one or two little things, if it's a date or Oxford comma is missing, you know, that's a different story.
So what I'm hearing you say then is if we were to withdraw something because we need to bring it back.
Well, or you're doing it, you might be doing it tonight because, as I mentioned, this comes up a lot in policy things. So just like when I walked in and you were talking about the magnet with the cafeteria and the lunch menus and stuff. That was almost, that conversation's almost like something that could be in this, because suddenly it's like, okay, we have the amendment to have the QR codes on the magnet, what's on the QR code. Well, I think it'd be a good idea to put the menus on it. That's a great idea. They can go to that. Well, I think it should be building specific. All right, well, the building specific would be our twig, the branch would be, you know, the build, or the QR code in general versus just the magnet or whatever. So you may just decide at this point, let's just scrap the whole thing, start fresh, and put in, because maybe there's some other things we wanted, or do we gotta put 2 QR codes, or is that too complicated? Well, maybe we want 2 for the high schoolers, but we don't want it for the elementary kids.
So in that situation, we should do a substitution, not a withdrawal. Because we
Yeah,
intend to
substitute,
make
because
another-
you intend to do
yeah.
something, where if I make the motion and it's seconded, and the whole conversation is, well, I think Eric needs more money, or not more money, more information from.
Don't give him ideas,
Yeah.
he just got here.
I was talking about this. But if it was from DPI or you need some more information from USDA on our example that we're using, then we might just do the motion to withdraw because it's not ready.
So
Right? Or you could do a motion to postpone to a time certain.
That'd be preferable than to just everyone voting no on it.
Correct, yeah, because the voting no, not only are we talking about the legal and the rules of order, but also would have the piece of food service employees, your director of nutrition services going, why did they vote no on
Right,
this?
yeah.
Right? Versus they did a motion to withdraw, they did a motion to postpone indefinitely, they did a motion to take this up at the August meeting, whatever it happens to be.
Can you make a motion to table, which would
You
automatically bring it
can,
back?
the issue, well, table doesn't automatically bring it back. So what you could do is, so the motion to table basically just puts it in limbo,
I see.
right? And remember our open meetings law, once it's tabled, somebody has to make the request, board president, superintendent, however your process works to get it on the next agenda. Otherwise, you could say, I keep on picking on Eric, but let's just say, all right, we're gonna put this on, I'm gonna motion to postpone to the August meeting, so we have a time certain, because by that time, Eric will be able to get the information from nutrition services at DPI and USDA on this thing. And everybody goes, yes. So that way, staff, everybody else knows, we didn't say no on it, we did a clarification on it. The motion to postpone indefinitely is somewhat like a tabling, but again, you still have the open meetings law. So the Roberts Rules stuff for me is always, then we're gonna talk about reconsider or rescind. Reconsider we can do the same night, right? But I'll tell you what the special rules are on that. Rescind, we still have to comply with the open meetings law. It has to get on the future agenda. And there's certain times where it's not acceptable. So I mentioned earlier about, the friendly amendment piece. So, and these are things I do recommend is that, well, I should back up. Do you have it where there has to be a motion and a second before discussion happens, or do you do discussion before the motion?
Motion second.
Motion is second, then you have discussion. Okay. So what it's turned over to the body, like I mentioned, either party can accept or reject it. Some districts have some brief conversation before the motion is made, and they allow that just to minimize the amendment process. So let's say the agenda said the discussion of the $250,000 for the renovation. I might say, well, I'd be interested in doing that, but I think, are we doing September 1st or January 1st, Nate? Oh, well, let me check. Eric says January 1st. Okay. And is this a loan? Is this a grant? Is it money we have to pay back? Is it interest-free financing? No, it's a grant. Well, we should probably put that in there too. And then so that way some of the amendments happen before the formal motion actually hits the floor.
We put it in information discussion and then go in an action item.
Okay, so you.
Yeah, it's usually like information discussion, one meeting, and then action
Oh,
on
so
it the
yeah,
next.
different meeting, okay. Yeah, so then you could take care of some of this amendment stuff with your information discussion at the
Yeah.
preceding meeting.
We have an action item on tonight that is similar, that we got some feedback on, made the changes.
Okay,
So you can try to identify and sort out those specific languages before you get into the actual main motion being made, just for efficiency's sake, so that everyone agrees on those specific languages.
and then you could do that from, the president can say, so let's say the motion I had listed, the grant was a grant from DPI, but DPI didn't have the grant, it was from USDA. And everybody understood that that was an error, just a typo, basically. Then you could say, is everybody okay with changing that when the motion was made that Bob said DPI when he should have said USDA? Yes. Okay, and then is that approved by unanimous consent? Yes. All right, then we just move forward. And that doesn't count as an amendment. That's just clarifying.
But that would still have to be approved by unanimous consent.
Correct, yeah, that piece would be, yeah. But it's an error, or I've got the wrong date down. It was supposed to be September 1st of 2025, and I slipped and said 2026.
Is that recorded or not recorded?
I would record it that there was an error, and then the group through unanimous consent approved the modification. And then the presiding officer would the president would repeat the new motion that takes the place of the other one, so everybody understands what it is. And do you put them up on the screen?
Yeah, we don't put them on our.
Perfect, that's awesome, good. So this process, like I said, these two things with the motion to substitute and then it sounds like the way you've got your things set up where you have your discussion, you have a pretty good idea of what the motion might look like when you go into meeting 2, because you've done that in meeting 1. That should make things more expeditious on us.
So a good meeting 1, to continue the metaphorical dendrology, is kind of like fertilizer before you plant a tree, right? You make it all.
Yeah, and I think I would encourage anybody that if you do have questions, give them to Nate so he can either explain it so there's less discussion, or he can change or modify the motion before, because he can change it up until 48 hours before?
Yeah.
24 hours, so he can change it, so I think it just would help. I know I call him all the time with questions. I shouldn't ask it all the time, enough.
My experience is he's usually pretty friendly.
I mean, according to the survey.
So what I'm hearing then is like all the back end work that you do, Nate, and you're putting in that suggested motion. If there's discussion amongst the board, which is what we're encouraging, then that motion can be changed and noticed to the board 24 hours before the meeting.
Yeah, the only thing to be the gray rainy cloud here is you don't want to get into a walking quorum open meeting law thing.
Sure.
That's what I was
Yeah,
curious.
so you can, at the preceding meeting, you can say, I know you're gonna have some time on this, this is what we have as a draft. People can send things to Nate, but he can't really say, this is how the other members did things and share that with you. So he can bring it up and say, these are some of the comments I had, so it'd all be kind of fresh for you at meeting 2. So, but it's still, I think, the fact that you have a system where you have meeting 1, where you discuss, and then you come to meeting 2 with a draft motion, already puts you ahead of the curve on that, right? So you've already in a good spot. If you take advantage of the motion to substitute and/or this piece of, when you do the motions, you could still be informal enough, because the Roberts Rules doesn't prohibit this, to say, I make a motion to approve the $250,000, and the date on that was again? What was your effective date? I could still, there's nothing that says I can't solicit that
When
that
making the motion.
when making the motion itself, okay, just to make things a little faster. So, and hopefully, if it sounds like most of the time, Nate's gonna have something there for you already. So as far as, excuse me, there's various motions and aspects of it, because this is a big book. But we just went through the motion to amend and substitute, withdraw a motion. You might have a motion to divide a question, which is somewhat related to your consent agenda. The consent agenda, just an individual board member can say, I want to pull that item out, it's automatically pulled out. And then it gets discussed and acted on separately, but you might divide a question on something. So if it was $250,000 for kitchen renovations and $100,000 on a new HVAC filtering system, you might say, I want to divide those two. So we have the $250,000 on the renovation is treated differently than the HVAC filtering system, and go from there.
Interesting. I can think of, so I've been on the board for about a year, and I've been coming to meetings for about a year before that. And going through this, I can think of several times when like, oh, we or they should have withdrawn that instead of voting it down. Or specifically now, I can think of one where we should have divided it instead of. So I'm glad. Really, what I'm saying is, I'm glad you're here and teaching us about this. This gives us some tools that I can think of times we could have used.
Well, and the other thing, as I mentioned, your policy already says that you follow the rules for small boards, which gives you more flexibility, right? And so at the end of the day, the kind of the one take-home nugget amongst everything else, if you've properly posted it and the minutes accurately reflect what you voted on and a majority approved it, the rest of this stuff doesn't really matter. This is here to make your meetings more efficient. And the other factor of it is, like give you that piece. Historically, there are many circumstances where people try to use as a means to discredit the board if they feel the board isn't adhering to Robert's rules. Because they're like, oh, that kitchen renovation should not have been passed because the motion was never seconded. That's going to be more of an optics issue. It's not a legal issue. So, but if we do things correctly on this, it should make your meetings more efficient. And like you said, I could have just divided that question. I voted no, but I would have voted for the $250,000 for the renovation. But I wanted more information on the HEPA filter system that was going to be put in. And that would be fine to do.
I have a question on the board docs side, because I have to do the board docs piece. So if I'm thinking about this in like the Wayback Machine, as long as Crystal has it all documented, we could do more of a roll call vote on some of those amendments. I don't have to attempt to put that in to board docs and vote on it electronically and all of that craziness. As long as we have the main or like the end all be all amendment.
All that really matters at the end of the day are the draft minutes that she takes and then get voted on by the board. And then how you decide to load that up into board docs as the approved minutes later on is fine, because I know I run the board docs and the voting for our board of directors meetings.
Okay.
And amendments can be, has anybody ever seen what she has on her screen when she's doing it? Like there's 6 or 7 different votes.
I actually just don't
Table
know.
down. Yeah, so it can be hard to follow on the board docs, but if you use that to dump it into the meeting control planner to create the minutes, then really just that final piece is gonna be
Okay.
what the public's gonna really care about.
I think that's kind of where we got into the weeds, is because like
Yeah.
in board docs was the original motion a month ago. And then there was an amendment that we voted on, an amendment we voted on, and then it was like, how do we put those amendments into what was originally motion? Because that's like, it's already typed in there. It's already, so,
Yeah.
the minutes were fine.
The minutes were fine, yeah. The board docs
Board docs was a little.
Board docs kind of, I know exactly, like I said, I do it. It struggles with amendments, and that's why at our directors, again, I'm not subject to the open meetings law and stuff, but we kind of get them to the point where all the amendments have passed, and then I put the motion in, because otherwise, you can't really track it. I mean, I should say you can't. You can, it's just very cumbersome.
hard.
Very cumbersome.
I'm looking through the list of 2/3 votes required under Roberts, and so the motion to suspend the rules, is that also a way out if we find ourselves in this tangle of amendments and stuff? And can you walk through like practically how that works, and also on the board docs side? Like,
Yeah, so the motion to suspend rules when I asked you whether you discussed something before the motion or not. That could be one of, you know what, nobody's jumping to make the motion. And it's I would like to make a motion to suspend the rule to allow discussion, so then we can kind of get an idea of what the motion could look like. And then that passes, now we have our discussion, now we go into soliciting the motion, because now everybody's kind of more on the same board. And then here's your motion to, you know, the table versus indefinitely versus a time certain. Or I should have mentioned, or to refer it back to the policy committee or something else like that.
So the best thing to do is if you're a board member and you have questions or concerns or want to change something, we should ask to try to be on the discussion above before you vote on it. Or right away say, I make a motion to, what was that? Suspend or the Robert's rules to discuss this ahead of time.
Yep, you could do
So
that.
those would be the two ways to do it.
That I could do. I could also do this. So I could do a request for information. So let's say on my kitchen renovation one, I could say that I'm gonna request from the chair, can you have Eric explain the USDA funding grant process and how the timelines for that work? And we can get that from him prior to me making a motion, right? That's a little different than, we're gonna open up for the full board to discuss. I just need that point in order to facilitate being able to make the motion, which these other ones of, to your question, like, how would I split this? I'm in favor of one, but I'm not in the other. How do I split the question? You know, that'd be a question that's parliamentary inquiry. Or if, we did the motion to close debate and it was a 4-3 vote in this example, but it requires a 2/3. That would be, I'd ask a point of order. It doesn't look like debate got closed because it was just a 4-3, so we're still going. So those are there. You can see other things. If for some reason I was the chair and someone thought, I think Bob made a mistake on that, they could appeal it and then it goes to the whole body to do that.
Those are all motions.
These are all motions, right? These are all motions that can be made. And they take priority over the substantive item that's on the floor. But if we go back to this list, I mean, if you generally know these, and there are cheat sheets on these as well. So in the PowerPoint, there's a link to a cheat sheet that a gentleman named Jim Slaughter put together that kind of has, you know, X's underneath what you do. If you have something like that, that can help expedite things as well. But the main thing is that, kind of say to people, if you played a Monopoly with a kid, you know, depending on which kid you're playing and where, the rules kind of change a little bit. So I'm not trying to compare you to kids, but you have a system that works for you. And so some of these things you can say, okay, well, this is how, when we want information, this is what we do.
How
We
you
do a
deal with-
request for information. and
How you
go
deal
from
with free parking.
there. Right, exactly, right, exactly.
Who, if we make a parliamentary inquiry or a point of order, since we don't have a parliamentarian here, is Mitch as the board president the one who determines that?
He does it originally, and then if someone, I'll make sure that Mitch isn't the one who made the mistake, pretend I was the chairperson, I made the mistake, and somebody says, no, Bob, I think that does require a 2/3 vote, like on that example. Then, okay, then anybody can then take it to the whole group, and then at that point, somebody might say it. Now, you may not, most of the time you never end up there, because thing happens and someone just says, we have a point of order, and we actually had to have a majority vote on that, or a 2/3 vote. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, folks, you want to re-vote on that? I guess we're still talking, and you go from there on it.
Well, on the 2/3 vote, it requires a 2/3 of the whole body, not 2/3 of who's there, right?
No, these particular, so there's different types of 2/3 votes. Right? So the 2/3 votes that I mentioned earlier underneath the law on the changing the levy or changing something from one fund to another, that requires a 2/3 vote of the full membership of the board. The full board doesn't have to be here, but the vote has to be 5 out of 7, all right, in your case. For the Roberts rules, that's 2/3 of who's present, right, provided you have a quorum, right? Because so I can't leave debate open forever just by walking out of the room. Right? So that's who's here. So that's different, that's amongst the group that is present.
So if one person is missing for these, majority and 2/3 of the same thing, they'd both be 4 out of 6.
Correct. Right. So now, just to be respectful of your time, I'm gonna quickly hit this motion to reconsider and the motion to rescind. Motion to reconsider is using that example of we had passed it with the September 1st date, and we realized that, well, we were thinking we wanted that to start of the school year, but it actually doesn't align with that grant money, we want to do that later. That says the majority can revisit it. In order for a motion to reconsider to be considered, to be up on the floor, it has to be made by a person who was in the prevailing party. All right, so let's say it had passed with a September 1st date, and then you realized, you know what, it should have been January 1st. If I had voted for that, then I can make the motion to reconsider. Anybody can second it. So whoever voted, or they voted, anybody can vote it. If however, once that happens, it's immediately suspended, and now we vote on that piece, and then there's just a standard majority vote required for the motion to reconsider. If it's adopted, the original motion goes back on the floor, and then we'd have to make the amendment to the September 1st date. If it's defeated, the motion to reconsider is defeated, well, then the original thing stands. So that's still what you're doing. So let's say that happened, and then you decide, you know what, we shouldn't have done that. Would Nate properly post it at the next meeting? It's up there. Now, any one of the 7 of you can make the motion to rescind. So that, and then anybody can second it, right? And there's no specific time limit. Now, there's some things that can't be done like that. So the example I often give people is, let's pretend the vote was to enter into a contract with a vendor to do a roofing project. And the vendor went out and bought the various substrata, the layers, the shingles, everything, the insulation, all that for the project. And then we say, you know what, we probably got a cheaper price, we should rescind that action. Well, that's really not gonna happen because that person will have perhaps a contract reliance under contract claim. Say they relied on your motion and went out and expended this capital to do those various things. So there are certain circumstances where the motion to rescind doesn't come before you. But after you do the motion to rescind, that doesn't mean that the prior action is back on the agenda again. You could just end it. So somebody would have to make the motions, and first it'd have to be on the agenda that you were going to not just rescind, but then potentially discuss our kitchen renovation project. And then you'd have to make that motion, second it, and then you'd have it up for a vote.
So motion to rescind needs to be on the agenda.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so reconsider is already on the agenda because you had it on the agenda for tonight, let's say. So if you took a vote and you want to reconsider it, well, I just had to be in the prevailing party. Whether it passed or failed, they have to be in the prevailing party to make the main motion. Anybody can second. Rescind is future meeting, has to be on the agenda that's posted underneath open meetings law, and there, anybody can do it. But as I mentioned, there are some topics, it just died on me here. There's some topics, somebody just click me forward one? Yeah. Oh, I guess that wasn't it. So there's some topics, like I said, the contracts, like right here, yeah, unilaterally rescinding a contract that's been offered and accepted is out of order.
Yeah.
So as the chair might say, you might have to say, Bob, you can't do this because we've already approved the contract. Now, if Nate says, yeah, but there was fraudulent representation on their part, then that's a different story, right? But otherwise, that's where it is. So I think that's pretty much the main things, Nate, that we had talked about. I don't know if there's other things you wanted to chat about. Or...
I think the substitution and with the withdrawal, just those two alone, knowing that we can use them, will be a big help in the future.
Thank you
All
for
right,
doing
yeah.
that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Appreciate it.
Keep up the good work.
Another good idea would be to amend our policy, our onboarding policy for new board members.
Yeah.
Include training and.
What policy, onboarding policy?
There's an onboarding policy, there's an old onboarding policy that states certain things, like it does say like the business manager should be there, those sorts of things, yeah.
All right, next is, board policy, first reading and updates to the property.
Yeah, and we'll just delay that. We weren't able to meet until last night. It was a marathon session, but we did get through a lot of good discussion, so that will just be moved to the August meeting, August 13th.
All right, on the business action items, I'll entertain a motion on approval of the updates to the employee handbook.
I make a motion to approve the updates to the employee handbook as presented.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. The motion on the floor is I make a motion to approve the updates to the employee handbook as presented. Any discussion? Now let's vote.
You changing your way already.
Yeah.
You gave me more work.
Ew.
We have to change our policy if we don't require it.
Get a little point of order.
It is, it's true. You don't have it up.
Oh, I don't, sorry.
Motion carries 7-0. Next is consent. Does anybody want anything removed?
Can we pull the hiring of the school to career coordinator from the staff changes?
Okay, now the question we didn't ask was, this comes out, so then how is that reflected in the motion?
What motion?
So if we say, if the motion says move to approve consent agenda items A through C.
With the removal of.
With the remove, yes.
What does removing it do? Yeah.
Then we can discuss
Yeah, we
it,
can discuss it.
and then
Well,
it can be voted on after the discussion. It's just not a blanket yes or no, because it's not part of the full consent.
Okay. I'll entertain a
Can I-
motion.
Before you do, can I ask why you want it removed, or is that?
Because I am not gonna vote in favor of hiring someone for a position that I don't believe we should have.
I see, but that allows you to vote for everything else without that. Understood. Gotcha. Would we then vote on that?
After consent A through C without.
I see. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
So the motion I have is move to approve consent agenda items A through C with the removal of the hiring of the school to career coordinator position.
Who made that motion? I was just saying to remove
It
the
was just
thing,
like-
sorry.
Oh,
Oh, I don't think anyone.
Remove it, and then I'll say, do we vote on the school to career? So I'll entertain a motion. If no other changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent.
I make a motion to approve consent.
I
Sorry, my
don't-
thing's not loading. It's stuck. I move to approve consent agenda items A through C with the removal of the hiring of the school to career coordinator position. Sorry, it's still loading.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Motion, let's vote. There's no discussion. Motion carries 7-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve the school to career coordinator position.
I make a motion to approve the school to career coordinator position.
Is there a second? I'll second. There's a motion and a second. Motion on the floor is to approve the school to career coordinator position. Is there any discussion?
I'm wondering why the salary's so high? I mean, it's pretty high.
Yeah, and that's a matching from where they are in their previous district. Typically, when we have something like that, we would always consider a like position. In this case, we really don't have a like position because it's a part-time position.
How much do we pay Linda?
Uh,
Half.
Time Yeah, I believe it's $32,000.
Nate, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So we already have a person in mind, and that's why you know the other districts? Is that what you're saying? You said you compared to a like district?
No, this person that's up on
The
for
higher.
approval,
Yeah.
Matching.
yes. We can take, I can look at what they have already
Okay.
in DPI from last year. And they also, in their old district, had some stipends that would have brought it to this level.
Okay.
So what we're approving here, so we approved this position at a previous meeting. Then we've offered this person the job?
Correct.
Okay, so now this is just the approval to hire since we've offered them the job.
Correct.
I truly, in my mind, never thought this would be the salary that would be offered to this person. It seems like a very high salary.
This is actually $10,000 less than the top of the salary schedule.
How does it compare in years of experience, though? I feel like the years of experience on our teachers with 8 years of experience probably isn't. I mean, I don't know what this person's educational background is.
Has a master's degree,
So maybe
was a business ed.
master's degree,
was a business ed teacher.
years with master's degree.
I have a silly question, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just not understanding it right. So when we hire staff, any position, you all go out and do that process before we approve, is that correct?
Can you say that again?
Okay, so you all are like, hey, we have an open position, and then you start that hiring process before we actually approve hiring that person. So let's just say like we said no to this or whatever, then you just did all that work for us to say no. I'm trying to understand the efficiency,
Correct.
that's all.
We did approve this position though, we just didn't approve necessarily.
Hiring her for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't attach a salary level. And my mind didn't actually think that this job had that kind of salary associated.
Well, the other one was that, what you said, 32 part-time, that's half-time, just doubling it up, you're at 64, you're not that far off.
Actually, I think it's 32,500.
Yeah.
33,639.
So in the future, we should bring that up.
Yeah.
The discussion of approving a position.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if we've offered this person a job, this seems like a terrible time to yoink that back.
That's the reason why I was asking.
Yeah.
I'm not like against it, I was just trying to understand the formal process of this.
In the future, when we're considering what we did last time, we're approving the position, that would be a good time for us to be discussing what the salary range is expected to be.
Sure. Again, this does fall within, our range right now is 46,800 to 79,900.
Well, I know, but like, this number of years of experience with a master's degree, is that what,
Yeah.
this is what the teachers are gonna be looking at.
Sure. So again, if this were I'll give you an example. If this were a 5th grade position, we would never jump anybody that has similar experience so that the new person is making more than the current person. But this really is a one-of-one position where we've got a little bit of leeway here to match what she's making in their old district.
To be clear, I don't have any qualms with the salary, and the salary is what it is, and I would say for,
You just didn't like the additional position.
yes,
You just
I
wanted-
have,
you wanted-
I have other
you wanted
things I would
salary,
rather
yeah.
spend our money on than tripling FTE for this. But to speak to your question about like stuff, I would be very hesitant to put salary caps on positions that are created, because I think that then really narrows your pool of potential candidates, and I want the best person for any job that we have open. So if this is what the going rate is, if this is what this person needs to do their job to the best of their ability, to say, yes, I want to do this and they're the best, I don't have any issues with that. I strictly have an issue with the position itself and us having it. I want to make that very clear.
Just a clarification, it only triples our FTE for 1 year. After that, it will only be doubling it, and then when the current person retires, it will go back to 0.5.
I have yet to see a retirement or resignation from anyone in this position currently.
Sure, yeah, I get
So-
that.
And even so, given our FastBridge data that we've seen and other things, I would prefer to put our resources into more instructional support versus capstone experience for students.
I hear that.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying a salary cap, I was just wondering like how we process.
I would like to see a salary range brought.
Yeah, I was thinking as well about not setting a cap, but just avoiding the sticker shock of like, oh, I wasn't expecting this.
That was my first reaction when I saw that.
Is our salary schedule not our range?
It is.
Okay.
But maybe
So then we
include
don't need
that.
a range if our salary schedule is where people would be placed on.
Well, but then, claiming it's a one position that doesn't have any comparables really in the district is contradictory to that.
It's also handcuffing the administration to do their job, same token, and not trusting them to just make the best decision.
Well, I wouldn't mind matching her salary, but I don't think we should be matching her stipend, for example. And that would make her double what Linda's salary would be at 66,000, and that would be something, but it's like, we just had this big, long discussion about stipends not too long ago, and no.
Yeah, I would just, to provide context, if somebody's making $70,000 in another district, they're looking at that like their total salary with what they're being paid. And so then if that's not available in another district, typically they're not coming. I will say that depending on where we are at in a salary schedule, there's times when ours is higher and we're in really good shape, and then there's times when it's lower compared to other districts. It really does vary on individual positions.
Crystal's point about the retirement piece, so I think all of us came in with this fact of like the notion of like someone may be retiring. Like, so what if that doesn't happen? Like, what's our budgetary constraints if we have 1.5 people? Like, how do we handle that, I guess is my question.
Yeah, remember, next year, you're still only gonna have a 1.0 full-time position in that because the 0.5 that's there now will be in the youth apprenticeship grant.
So I had a question about that. If the money for the position, the salary could be written into the grant, why didn't we already do that?
Just based on the grant due date, those were due, I think, May 31st or something around that day.
But I mean, like in general, like if the grant would pay for the position,
Oh.
why didn't we put that in there? And grants are not guaranteed. I mean, we could say that we're gonna put it in there, but that doesn't mean they're gonna say yes.
Yeah,
They could say, no, we can't afford that, or
yeah, there's not an unlimited number that we can put in the grant. It's basically what you choose to do with that money. Like I believe this year, a lot of that grant money was spent on a CNA program in setting up that classroom that's now on the second floor. You're not gonna have that recurring cost now. So you look at what needs to happen in that program. We don't foresee those expenditures, so then that salary can go into the grant instead. It's not like we could write $200,000 into the grant. We are capped at a certain point.
Getting a similar amount of money, it's just the way we're choosing
Correct.
to spend it will now go towards the FTE.
Right.
Okay.
That doesn't apply to this coming school year, the 25-26 school year.
Just the following year, we will write it into the grant.
Right.
Where's the money being spent on this following year?
This following year,
With the grant money?
I could look that up.
I gotcha.
the most time we've ever spent in consent.
I feel like I opened a can of worms.
No,
I
this
just-
is useful discussion.
I feel like a lot of things have been covered in this discussion, pertinent to the point, but many things.
Can you find it, Eric?
I'm looking for that spreadsheet that was sent.
I guess my point in asking that is if there's that much leeway, we're indicating that we're gonna use it for the salary, but there's no guarantee that it's gonna be applied towards the salary. It could be applied towards anything.
No, it's only if we have to apply it to what we wrote into the grant. So whatever we write into the grant for the following year, we have to apply it to that because that's what they approved when granting the grant, when the grant was granted. But the following year, we will write that into our grant and then we can use it for that.
Are these grants 2 years?
No, year by year.
So say if you get a grant for 150 maximize, they use 50 for the salary, 100 for the CNA thing. Make sure they're, just say, they're gonna use 100, well, it's not a good analogy, but half somebody's salary and then, right?
So a majority of the grant is going towards instructional materials and supplies. I have $26,000 of that, and then there's other flyers and posters, so it's
For the CNA, just the supplies are just in.
OSHA, first aid, related coursework outside.
If there's no further discussion, let's vote. Motion carries 4-2-1 abstain. 4 ayes, 2 nays, 1 abstain.
Yep, thank you.
All right, moving on, future agendas. Anybody want anything changed?
Just one note, we do have our first Facilities and Finance Committee on Monday. We will have a presentation by JP Cullen on the start of a capital maintenance plan, which is where we want to be at this point and being able to prepare for that over the next really 10 years. And then we also have another Communications Committee meeting on the on August 5th as well. So those are upcoming before our next board meeting.
All right, nothing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second? Second, let's vote.
You have to repeat that motion.
So moved. Where is it?
You want a voice vote, Melissa?
Yes, I don't know what happened.
Would you like to adjourn?
I would, very much so. I adjourned soon with my clip, I guess.
Motion carries 7-0.